it's Jennifer from Flux. In this video, I'm going to show you how to crochet this super cute Sleepy Kitty Stuffie. We're going to be using some scrap yarn to create some fun stripes and then a nice little face. We're going to embroider, and then I'm going to show you how to shape up these ears. It's very, very easy, and it's a wonderful project. You can give away as a gift, use up some scrap yarn, and it's lots of fun. I'm going to walk you through the whole thing. So let's get started. The finished project measures about 6.5 inches tall and has a circumference of about 16 inches. For this project, you'll need a tapestry needle, a pair of scissors, a ruler or tape measure is super helpful to measure as you go along. You're also going to need a 9mm end crochet hook. This is my Furls Candy Shop. I'll put the link below if you'd like to get one for yourself. And then for our yarn, as you can see, I have tons and tons of yarn here. This is truly one of those wonderful projects where you can use all kinds of little odds and ends. Now, all the yarn you see here is Wool Ease Thick and Quick from Lion Brand Yarn. The colors that I'll be using, I'm going to be doing some stripes and things like that. I'll put the colors above so you can see all the color names because there are quite a few here. But I am going to be doing the body, the bottom part of our stuffie in stripes, and then I'll do more of like a solid color for the top, and we'll learn how to put a little face on our animal as well. You'll also need something to stuff your stuffed animal with. So I'm going to be using some polyfill. This is polyester fiber fill. It's just that stuffing that they put in stuffed animals mostly, and pillows and things like that. However, if you want to, you can use yarn scraps. You can use crumpled up pieces of fabric or fabric strips. I've seen people use cotton balls, so just use whatever you have on hand. I happen to have some of this on hand, but you can use all these little yarn clippings that we all end up with. It works wonderfully as stuffing as well. I'm going to scoot all this yarn out of the way. We are going to use it, but I'm going to grab my first color first. So what we're going to do is we're going to create like a flat sort of disc and then work our way up, creating some stripes. But the flat part will help our little stuffed animal sit nice and flat. Okay, so I'm just going to grab a color, doesn't matter which color, and we're going to just make like a little disc for the bottom. So let me zoom way in so you can see the stitches that we're going to be doing. What we need to do first is put a slip knot on our hook. So wrap the yarn around your fingers to make a loop, bring the yarn behind the loop, reach in with your hook, bring up the loop and tighten. I'm going to stick with this raspberry color for the whole base, and then we'll start to work our way up. What we're going to do first is chain 4. So to make a chain, wrap the yarn around the hook and bring it through the loop. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we're going to join in the farthest chain from the hook, that first chain we made, with a slip stitch to create a ring that we'll be working our stitches into. So insert the hook into that farthest chain from the hook, bring up a loop. Now bring that loop through the loop that's already on your hook, and we now have the ring that we're going to work our stitches into. So you can kind of like open that up so you can see it a little bit better. We're also going to hold this tail along the edges we work to weave it in as we go along, okay? So we're going to do some double crochets to begin, but first we need to chain 3. So 1, 2, 3. That's going to count as one of our double crochets. Next, we're going to work 11 double crochets into the center of the ring. To make a double crochet, wrap the yarn around the hook, insert the hook into the center of the ring, bring up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on your hook. Wrap the yarn around the hook, bring it through the first 2 loops, wrap the yarn around the hook, bring it through the last 2 loops. My yarn split a hair. There we go. Okay, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, still holding that tail along the edge as we work. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, pushing things over. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Okay, then we're going to count 3 chains up, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to join with a slip stitch to close our round. So round 1 is complete. There we go. Now what you can do at this point is grab your scissors, flip things over, and pull this really tight to close up the ring. You don't necessarily have to trim because this is going to be the inside of the stuffed animal, and you're not going to see it. So I just trimmed it though. Okay, we're going to do round 2. We're continuing to build that disc that's going to be the base of our stuffed animal. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Now in this very first stitch, we're going to work 1 double crochet. In the next stitch, we're going to work 2 double crochet. So 1 and 2 on that same stitch. And you're just going to do this all the way around. So we're 2 double crochet in the next stitch, 1 and 2, 2 double crochet in the next stitch, and so forth. Okay, so I'm going to continue around and work my 2 double crochets in each stitch, and when we get towards the end of round 2, we're going to rejoin and move on to round 3. Okay, just coming up to the end of the round. Again, we're working 2 double crochets in each stitch. Okay, so now we're at the end, and here's our starting chain. Remember that chain 3 we did? We're going to count 3 chains up, 1, 2, 3, and close up round 2. Okay, so now we have this nice little circle that's going to be the bottom. Okay, let's work one more round this way, and then we're going to start transitioning upward. Okay, so for the next round, what we're going to do is chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then once again in that first stitch, work a double crochet. All right, and then in the next stitch, work 2 double crochet. And then in the next stitch, work 1 double crochet. And then we're just going to repeat that. So in the next stitch, 2 double crochet. 1 and 2. A little bit more yarn here. Next stitch, 1 double crochet. Okay, so work 2 double crochet, 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, 1 double crochet, all the way around your circle. And then our circle is going to be big enough for us to make the bottom and work upward. Okay, so 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet. All right, I'm going to keep doing this all the way around our circle. And then when we rejoin, we're going to start working upward. All right, just coming up to that last stitch, we're going to work our double crochet and then join with a slip stitch to close in that third chain up, same thing we've been doing. Okay, now we have the bottom here, and that's actually, this will actually be the part that rests on the surface, and then we're going to work up. What we're going to do is what I like to do when I'm making baskets or things that I want to sort of sit flat, I like to work a back post double crochet in each stitch around before I start working upward so that it gives a nice little edge and keeps that nice and flat, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to work a back post double crochet. If you're not familiar with this stitch, it's super easy. It's like a regular double crochet, but it's where you put your hook to begin. So wrap the yarn around the hook, and we're going to go to that first post, that column right here that we see, and we're going to take our hook and we're going to go from the back, go over top of that post and back out, and then we're going to wrap the yarn around the hook and bring it back through the way you came. Then wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the first 2 loops, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the last 2 loops. And as you can see, it gives us a little ridge, and when it sits down, it'll be a nice little edge on the table. Okay, so let's do a couple of these nice and slow, and then we'll pick up speed. Wrap the yarn around the hook, come up from the back, go over that post, wrap yarn around hook, bring it back the way you came, yarn around hook, bring it through the first 2 loops, yarn around hook, bring it through the last 2 loops. Now let's do the next one. We're going to pick up a little speed here. We're just going to do a back post double crochet in each stitch all the way around our little circle here. And we're sticking with the same color because this little edge here will be the first little peak of color that you see on the bottom. Okay, we're going to switch to some stripes next. Okay, so just keep going all the way around with your back post double crochets, and then when we rejoin, we're going to switch colors and move ahead to create some pretty stripes. Okay, just working that last back post double crochet of our round, and then we're going to do the same thing we've been doing, count that third chain up and join with a slip stitch to close. All right, now we're going to switch colors, so I'm going to cut the yarn at this point. And we're going to fasten off. Wrap the yarn around the hook and bring it through the loop. We don't need to worry about weaving in the ends. They're all going to kind of go inside of this. But what we do need to do is sort of shape things up. Now we have our little flat bottom that we've made. And then we made a little series of back post double crochets to give it, as you can see, it has a nice base that it can sit on now. So it can kind of sit up on its own, which is neat. Okay, we're going to pick our next color, and then what we're going to do is start making some pretty stripes. We're also going to start working in half double crochet at this point also, because it's a little bit of a tighter stitch, and when we stuff our stuffed animal, it will kind of not let the filling show. So where we tied this off here, we're going to reinsert our hook into that same stitch, and just grab any color you have, and we're going to hook the new yarn on. Whoops, and we're going to do the little body in some stripes. Okay, so we're just going to tie that right on, just like that. And then what we're going to do is just put those tails right on the inside of this. No need to worry about them, which is pretty cool. We're going to reinsert the hook back into that same stitch, and we're going to bring up a loop of the new color and chain 2. 1 and 2, and then in the next stitch we're going to work a half double crochet. So to work a half double crochet, what you do is wrap the yarn around the hook, insert it into that stitch, bring up a loop. Then what you're going to do is wrap yarn around hook, bring it through all 3 loops on the hook. And we're just going to do this all the way around. We're going to use this stitch for the remainder of our piece. Okay, so just work a half double crochet in each stitch all the way around. Okay, so I'm going to keep doing that with my round, and then we'll rejoin in just a moment. All right, just coming up to that very last stitch, and then what we're going to do is, now this time we're going to count 2 chains up because our chain was only 2 high. Okay, so count 2 chains up and join to close the round with a slip stitch. And then what you're going to keep doing is we're going to cut the yarn. We're going to do 1 round for the body part. We're going to do 1 round for each color. So I'm going to switch for each round, and then once we get a ways up and start to do like the top part, the head part, we will do 1 solid color, and that will make it more of a distinctive of a head and a body, but also when we go to embroider the little face on there, it'll show up better if it's not on multicolor stripes. So I'm just going to grab any random color, and we're going to do the next color. And you're just going to do the same thing. We're going to insert the hook into that last stitch worked, bring the new yarn through, and just tie it right on. Okay? So just keep working this round, this half double crochet round, in multiple colors. And the fun part about it is that you can really experiment with different ways colors look side by side. You can play around with that a lot and have a lot of fun with that. So keep going with your half double crochet rounds with your multiple colors and your stitches all the way around. Just work a half double crochet stitch in each round, all the way around. And then when we rejoin, I'm going to have added some more rounds and more stripes, and then we'll start to work on the top part, the head part, in the solid color. It's very similar to what we're doing now. We're just going to work in a solid color for a little bit. So keep going with your half double crochet rounds, and then when we rejoin, we'll start to work on the top part. Okay, just working that last half double crochet, and as you can see, I've added a bunch more colors. So what we're going to do once again is join in that second chain up with a slip stitch to close the round, and then we're done with this color. So we can just cut the yarn, fasten off, wrap the yarn around the hook, bring it through the loop. Okay, so I just wanted to show you, before we start the top part with like the face and everything, I just wanted to show you what I've done here. So we did our back post double crochet round with the raspberry, and then I did a round of butterscotch, a round of the glacier, a round of pumpkin, a round of blossom, a round of raspberry, and then another round of butterscotch. So I wanted to really mix up the colors here. So I did a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 half double crochet rounds. Now, we're going to go on to the top head part, which I'm going to do in all one color. So the bottom body will be striped, and then we're going to do this like top solid color. I'm going to choose the light blue. I did a little bit of light blue down here, so it'll sort of pick it up in the top part as well. And there's a lot of warm colors here, so I sort of wanted to contrast it a little bit. Use whatever you have on hand, whatever scraps that you have, and it will look great. Okay, so where we fastened off here, we're going to reinsert our hook, and we're just going to keep working the same half double crochet rounds, but I wanted to show you this part just because we're switching to not switching colors now. We're going to stick with this blue for a while. Okay, so I'm just tying it on like I've been doing, and I'm just tucking. If you can see, this is full of ends and no big deal. We're just throwing them right in there, and they're going to just stay put. We don't need to weave anything in. Okay, reinsert your hook back in there, and then just keep going with your half double crochet rounds to do the top part. So I'm just going to work a half double crochet in each stitch around. Same thing we've been doing, but I'm going to switch to the blue for a while, okay? So just keep going with your half double crochet rounds, and then when we rejoin, we will have some more blue up top here, and we're going to learn how to close the top off. We're going to embroider a little face on there. We're going to stuff it. We're going to do all kinds of fun things next, okay? So work a few blue rounds. When we rejoin, I'll tell you exactly how many I did, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, just working that very last stitch of the round, and then I'm just going to join with a slip stitch to close the round. Okay, so as you can see, we have some beautiful colors, and I did like a solid section of blue. So before we have our tail, so it's kind of ready to seam, but before we seam and stuff this, we need to put a little face on our little stuffy here. So I have some scrap yarn left over from this project, and I'm just going to grab a little bit of it, and we're going to make a little face. Now, I'm going to sort of freehand this. You can feel free to sketch on a piece of paper or something what kind of face you would like to put on yours. Now you can replicate the same colors, you can use some other stuff, but I'm just going to do a really minimal little nose and just like a little like half circle eye, something like that, okay? So what you want to do is sort of take your piece of yarn and grab your needle, and you're going to come up from behind here and just bring it up like that. Leave a tail so you can tie it off later, but we're going to go straight across. We're doing this is the nose first, okay? So we're going to go straight across, and then right below that we're going to make a little bit of a shorter line. Now it's okay to go in between some of these yarn plies, but we're sort of doing like an upside down triangle or pyramid shape, okay? So we're just going to make a slightly shorter line right below that first line. And we're going to do this all the way down until we have a cute little nose, okay? So do this again with your next line. I'm just going to go right down below it and make that line slightly shorter, okay? Now if it disappears in there a little bit, that's okay. You can embroider things right over top of other things. You just want to go nice and slow and make sure that your work is nice and neat, okay? All right, so we're getting a cute little nose. I'm going to do like a sort of like a little point at the bottom here, just to make it look look more triangular. Okay, so here's our cute little nose. And sometimes what I like to do when I embroider is you can kind of go back in with your needle and sort of like puff those stitches out a little bit, okay? And you can take your tails and sort of pull things a little tighter if need be. So now we have a little nose, okay? I'm also going to, now eventually we're going to have some ears, okay? So you want to kind of plan that out. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some little eyes, okay? So I'm going to kind of go off to the side here, and I'm going to do a back stitch. I'm going to show you how to do that. So come in, same yarn and everything. I didn't want to go too colorful with my embroidery, and I wanted to definitely use something that I already used before. But we're going to come up from the underneath like we just did, and then go back down. And then this is a back stitch. This gives you a little bit, now again, you might need to pull that out a little bit so it shows more. This is a back stitch. It's going to give you a little bit more solid of a line than a running stitch. A running stitch is like a dotted line. Okay, so I'm going to come up about another stitch width apart, and I'm going to go back down where that other stitch began. Okay, that's the back stitch. Whoops, let's come back so we don't make a loop there. And then our one little stitch here keeps getting tucked in. So, okay, and then we're going to just come up from the bottom and come back down. And if you want to give your little stuffy some eyelashes, feel free to do that. But we have a little eye now. I like to keep this stuff really simple because we're using very thick yarn. It's very fluffy. We don't need a ton of detail, just something really, really simple. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes less is more. So I like to keep it nice and simple, okay? Especially if you are unsure about your embroidery skills. That's also a good case for keeping it simple as well. Okay, so I just did another back stitch to make another eye. Now, I would recommend looking at your stuff, like flip it back over and look at everything. And, you know, if you want to change the way something looks, you know, if you want to get a little bit more definition on your nose, you can put a little stitch that goes this way, just like that. But I'm just going to do like a little sleepy face, something real sweet and simple. All right, I'm trying to define the nose a little bit. Now, if you want to do some eyelashes on your eye, you can. Feel free to do whatever you like. Okay, so my nose has a little bit more definition now. I kind of thickened it up a little bit. But you can see the inside, but it really doesn't matter because we're stuffing it, okay? Now, if you need to sort of shape things up a little bit, I might add a stitch or two to my eyes as well. Okay, so I went ahead and added a little bit more to the face. And again, you can use your needle to sort of manipulate these stitches around if you need to. But I went and added just a tiny little stitch here, and then a little half circle, and then a little half circle, and I extended the eyes a little bit. Embroidery is like kind of like a push and pull, add a little bit. Sometimes you have to rip it out, totally fine. I usually will pull things out and redo them just to get it just right, okay? So I'm really happy with the face. Now we can stuff it. We're gonna stuff it, seam the top, and then put a little stitch in to get some ear definition, okay? So I have just a little bit of yarn left, and we're gonna work on that next, okay? So what I like to do is get it seamed about halfway or a little bit more than halfway across and then stuff it, because if I try to stuff it now, it's just gonna kind of be like bursting out the top, okay? So fold your piece in half so that the top is flat and that your face is centered, okay? Grab your needle and thread it, and then we're going to hold our piece together like a sandwich. You want the face to be visible because you don't want anything to shift in the middle, because if it shifts like this or something, then the ears won't be straight, okay? So as you're sewing it together, make sure that you keep your piece still. Don't let it shift at all. You could even take a clothespin or something like that just to kind of tack it down while you work. I use clothespins all the time I keep them kind of clipped up high nearby so I can just grab one as needed. But you want to keep everything nice and straight. Okay, so what we're going to do is just a very simple whip stitch. That's going to be pretty invisible because we're using the same yarn, and it's really easy to just cruise through. Okay, so holding both pieces together like a sandwich, just go through both layers, and then you're going to come through here, and you're going to go in both layers. And again, we are not going all the way across with this. Okay, so we're just going to use your stitches as a guideline. You're just going to see how that's like a V and then a V next to it. Just line them up, go through both layers. Line them up, go through both layers. Okay, we're going to go about halfway across, and then we're going to stuff it. And one thing I really enjoy about making these types of things is the tiny amount, even though we've used all these colors and we've embroidered and we've seamed, it's really neat because we have very few ends we're going to have to weave in. They're all tucked in, okay? So I've gone almost halfway across. I'm going to take my clothespin off, and I have a nice little opening to stuff. Okay, so I have my fiber fill, and you just get it situated here. Now, one thing I like to keep handy when I'm stuffing things is a hook or a pair of scissors or something pointy, and that's going to help us stuff it down into the bottom and get it just evenly dispersed. Now with stuffing, what I like to do is take a small pinch. Now let me zoom out so I'm a little bit out of the way here. A small pinch and do a little bit at a time. I don't like to take a big ball of it and try to stuff it all in there. You're going to get a little bit more evenness if you do a little bit at a time, okay? So just take little pinches of your stuffing. Now, likewise, if you don't have stuffing, totally fine. There are so many things you can use to stuff your piece. You can use yarn scraps. So any yarn scraps you have, that's why in other videos whenever we do a lot of clipping, I say save those yarn scraps because this is a perfect project for something like that. But yarn scraps, you could use fabric scraps. I've seen people use cotton balls, all kinds of things like that. If you have a little bit of fiber fill and a little bit of yarn clippings, just throw any and all of it in there, okay? Some people like to put something weighted at the bottom so it sits up. But as you can see, that post stitch that we did, it's sitting very nicely. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with the amount of filling that I have. And you also want to make sure that you take it and you kind of tuck it up here too, because we're going to have our ears up here as well. Okay, so just make sure you get a little bit in there so you can sort of manipulate it around. Okay, you don't want it to be overstuffed because it's going to look lumpy. And you don't want it to be understuffed either because it will look like it's sagging, okay? So once you get everything stuffed, take your layers back together, give it a little tug because as we stuffed it loosened it up a little bit. And then we're just going to continue working our seam, okay? So if you want to make an owl, you can just sort of leave the ears as is. They look very owl-like right now. But if you want to I'm making a cat. So if you want to make a cat like me, we're going to do a little bit more to these ears. So right now they sort of look owl-like. You can leave them like that if you want to. Okay, let's tie this off. We're going to go back in that last corner with our loop here. Go almost all the way through, but then take your needle through that last loop and pull tight. Just like that, okay? And that's it. Okay, so I'm going to weave this in because I'm going to use a different piece of yarn for the ears. Okay, I'm going to go in to the inside of it, go way down, come down in a random spot towards the middle, give it a nice tug, and snip. Shape that ear up just like the other one. Might want to shape up the whole thing just to get it nice and situated. So the next thing we're going to do, I'm not going to take this out. I didn't have the yarn in quite the spot I wanted it to. What we're going to do is create like a little cinch here for a kitty ear, okay? So all we want to do is take our yarn. We have just a little piece. I would say it's about 12 inches with a tail on our tapestry needle. And you want to sort of like eye it up first. I don't want to cinch up the eyeball. I want to leave that visible, okay? So you want to sort of like cinch it like that, okay? So what we're going to do is just sort of shape it up. And it kind of like shapes itself, really, see? But I want it to be permanent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in this ear like this on the end. And we're going to get all the tails woven in, so don't worry about that. So just leave a little tail here. And we're going to go through the entire ear like this. A real easy, simple cinch, okay? I'm just going in and out, in and out. Same color yarn is really important, and see how it just sort of blends. And I'm only doing like 3 or 4 stitches here, okay? So what I want to do now, okay, if I pull it like that, see how it like flattens it a little bit? And then if we come around here, go around the top here, and I'm going to do a knot, okay? But as I do the knot, kind of pull it down, okay? See how I created an ear? Isn't that the cutest thing ever? Okay, so then we're going to take this and we'll just fasten off, okay? Just like that. Leave that tail alone. We'll deal with that later. Now we have the other side. Just give it a little, like a little cinch, okay? And then what you can do is take your needle, and I probably could have made this tail a little bit longer, but it's okay. Just put your, if you ever have a small tail, this is a good little opportunity to show you a tip. Put the needle in first, then thread it, pull it through, put it through the loop, but you can kind of pre-thread it, and then you can sort of cinch it up, okay? And we have a kitty ear. Okay, the tails, super easy. Once again, we're just going to go down into the piece to a random spot, doesn't matter. Pull it out, snip, and then it'll disappear. Take this other tail, go into the piece, come out anywhere random, pull it enough so that that knot kind of lays down, snip, and it'll disappear. Okay, so we have one ear, and it's nice and shaped. Our kitty looks very happy too, by the way. So let's do that on the other side. You're just going to simply repeat. Okay, so it's all shaped up. I just have one little tail. I repeated the same exact thing for the other ear. And just remember, whenever you're embroidering something or seaming something, if it's not exactly symmetrical, you can do one of two things. First, you can pull it out and start over. Totally fine. The other thing also is just to know that it's handmade, and it's a handmade piece, and that is part of its charm. When you're done, you can sort of shape up these ears, shape them up, give them a little bit of a 3D look, and that is it. That's how you make this Sleepy Kitty Stuffie. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Fiber Flux video updates. Thanks again.